The Galactic War Council had existed for over 10,000 cycles. Empires rose and fell under its decree, their fates sealed in chambers of polished obsidian, where beings from 100 species whispered their strategies in hushed, reverent tones. Wars were decided before they ever began. Races were extinguished before they could resist. The war machine never faltered. Until now. High Warlord Tal of the Chan Dominion narrowed his 6 amber eyes at the holographic war map floating above the chamber's war table. The shifting displays of occupied worlds, broken fleets and ravaged planets told a story the Council did not wish to admit. For the first time in its long history, a war refused to end. And the enemy? Humans. This is unacceptable, growled Chancellor Varkesh, his serpentine coils tightening around the platform where he sat. His forked tongue flickered, a nervous tick unbecoming of a council member. The war should have been over cycles ago. Why do these creatures persist? A silence fell over the chamber. None dared speak the truth outright. Because humans refused to break. For nearly a decade, the Galactic Council's greatest fleets had waged war against them. It was supposed to be an effortless extermination, just as it had been with countless other species. The invasion of Sol had gone as expected. Earth's defenses were wiped out within days. The orbital bombardments reduced its cities to charred husks. Humanity's armies were scattered, their governments shattered. But instead of surrendering, instead of bending like every other conquered race, they adapted. They hid in the ruins. They hijacked Council warships. They turned the very technology used to subjugate them into weapons of their own. Every week, the Council received reports of another destroyed human colony that had suddenly re-emerged, striking back with stolen firepower. It wasn't just that they fought. It was how they fought. They had no central command anymore. Every city, every settlement, every surviving ship operated as if they were winning. As if the war had only just begun. And they were winning. Slowly. Inexorably. The Council had underestimated them. Now, the war was spiraling out of control. This ends now, Tal rumbled, his mandibles clicking in agitation. Deploy the extinction fleets. Burn every world that harbors them. No more half measures. No more mercy. The assembled warlords murmured their approval. This war had gone on long enough. It was time to finish humanity. But they did not know what was coming. Because humanity had one last move left. And it was something the Galactic Council had never prepared for. Kalen, somewhere in the outer colonies. The air smelled of burning metal. Kalen crouched behind the shattered remains of a Chan troop carrier, his pulse thrumming in his ears. The wreckage of the recent skirmish lay strewn across the battlefield, twisted bodies, shattered mechs, and the acrid stink of plasma fire still lingering in the air. He adjusted the grip on his stolen Council rifle. His fingers ached, his muscles screamed for rest, but he couldn't stop moving. Not yet. The last remnants of his unit were scattered. Half his squad had been wiped out in the ambush. The rest were either running or already dead. But Kalen wasn't retreating. No. He was hunting. A faint chittering sound echoed through the wreckage. A Chan patrol checking for survivors. Kalen grinned grimly. Perfect. He flattened himself against the wreckage, steadying his breath. One step. Two. He could hear their mandibles clicking, their armor shifting as they moved cautiously through the debris. They thought they were the hunters. They were wrong. Kalen moved fast, a blur of motion. He lunged from the shadows, jamming the muzzle of his rifle into the nearest Chan's neck joint and firing point blank. The alien convulsed, collapsing before it could scream. The second turned, mandibles flaring in alarm, too slow. Kalen twisted, bringing his combat knife across its throat in a single brutal motion. 2 down. More were coming. He retrieved a communicator from one of the fallen soldiers, quickly rewiring it with practiced ease. If he could intercept their signals. A sudden explosion shook the ground. Kalen barely had time to react before a towering war mech crashed through the ruined buildings ahead. Its massive frame, a hybrid of Council technology and human scavenged parts, gleamed in the burning twilight. His heart slammed against his ribs. Holy hell, he muttered. They actually built it. The Resistance had been planning this for months. A prototype war mech, something powerful enough to go toe-to-toe with the Council's most advanced units. The last time he'd seen it, it was just a half-functional skeleton of scrap metal and stolen tech. Now it was alive. And it was angry. From the mech's cockpit, a voice crackled over Kalen's earpiece. Thought you'd like the view, Lyra's voice teased. Kalen let out a breathless laugh. You insane brilliant bastard. Tell me that thing actually works. Oh, it works. The war mech raised its cannon arm. A charged plasma bolt screamed through the ruins, obliterating an approaching Shan gunship in a single shot. Kalen's grin widened. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were taking the war to the enemy. Galactic War Council, 48 hours later. The chamber was in chaos. Reports flooded in, entire fleets vanishing. Warships hacked and turned against their own. Council officers assassinated in their own fortresses. The humans had infiltrated everything. For the first time in its history, the Council's war machine had lost control. And the worst part? It was only the beginning. Talus' mandibles twitched in fury. He smashed a clawed fist against the war table. We must retaliate immediately. Wipe them from existence. Chancellor Varkesh's voice was barely a whisper. You still don't understand. Tal turned on him, eyes blazing. Explain. Varkesh met his gaze, unblinking. They were never fighting for survival, he hissed. They were fighting to win. A cold silence fell over the chamber. For the first time in 10,000 cycles, the Galactic Council feared an enemy. Because humanity wasn't just enduring. They were adapting. They were changing the game. And the war would never be the same again. Galactic War Council, the breaking point. Chancellor Varkesh had lived through 5 centuries of war. He had seen rebellions crushed, civilizations reduced to nothing, and once proud species wiped from the stars. The Council's dominion had always been absolute. Until now. The war table flickered with real-time reports. Red markers, designating Council-controlled systems, were blinking out across the map, one after another. It made no sense. These planets were fortified. The enemy was supposed to be on the brink of collapse. Instead, they were spreading like wildfire. This, Tal growled, his mandibles clenching. This is impossible. Varkesh remained silent, watching the patterns unfold. The humans had done something no species had ever managed before. They had broken the Council's war doctrine. It had always been simple: overwhelm, dominate, eradicate. But humans did not play by those rules. They did not fight on the Council's terms. They had no central command to eliminate. No homeworld that could be burned to force a surrender. Every time the Council struck a decisive blow, the war only got worse. The humans fought in cells, vanishing into ruins, stealing Council ships, infiltrating high command structures. They had even begun turning entire populations against their rulers. And now there were whispers. On 100 occupied worlds, aliens were starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, humanity could win. Tal slammed his fist against the table. They are nothing but primitives. Savages. We should have crushed them cycles ago. Varkesh turned his cold gaze toward him. No. We should have feared them cycles ago. A hush fell over the war room. The implications were too dangerous to speak aloud. Because if fear had to be factored into this war, it meant humanity was no longer prey. They were the hunters. Kalen, the counterstrike begins. The stolen gunship rattled as it burst through the upper atmosphere of Morvith 7, a crucial refueling station for the Council's war fleets. Kalen sat strapped into his seat, one hand gripping the safety bar above him, the other holding onto his stolen pulse rifle. The compartment was crammed with resistance fighters. Some human, some alien. They were all watching him. He wasn't a leader. He wasn't a general. But he had survived. And in this war, survival had become legend. Lyra's voice crackled over the comms from her stolen war mech, deployed planetside. You're cutting it close, Kalen. They're reinforcing the station. Kalen smirked. Tell me something I don't know. The gunship lurched as defensive cannons locked onto them. Impact in 10 seconds. Kalen toggled the squad channel. Brace for impact. This is gonna hurt. The gunship hit the landing pad at full speed, scraping across its surface as explosions erupted around them. The moment it stopped, Kalen and his fighters poured out, weapons blazing. A full battalion of Chan shock troopers was waiting. The air filled with plasma fire. Kalen moved like a ghost, dodging between cover, laying down bursts of fire, watching his squad follow suit. Humans weren't stronger. They weren't faster. But they were unpredictable. Lyra's mech stomped into view, its massive arm cannon tearing through the enemy lines with brutal precision. Kalen gritted his teeth. The real target wasn't the troopers. It was the command hub. Because if they could seize control of the orbital defense grid, they wouldn't just take the planet. They could turn the Council's own fleet against them. Galactic Council's response: too late? High Warlord Talus' eyes flared in rage as another planet was lost. This was no longer a war. It was an infection. The humans had breached the war machine. And if they couldn't stop it now, the entire council would fall. Morvith 7, the breaking of the council. The corridors of Morvith 7's command hub were thick with smoke and the scent of scorched metal. The floor trembled beneath Kalen's boots as explosions rattled the facility, each blast marking another critical system disabled by the resistance. His pulse rifle was running low on energy, and his squad had already taken losses. But they were inside. That was all that mattered. Lyra's voice crackled in his earpiece, her tone edged with static and urgency. Kalen, you're out of time. The fleet's moving into position. If we don't turn the orbital defenses now, we're finished. Kalen wiped sweat and grime from his forehead. His squad was down to 6 fighters, including 2 wounded. The rest, gone. A human resistance fighter, a young woman named Jace, pressed against the bulkhead beside him. They've got auto turrets lining the last corridor. No way through unless we disable them. Kalen clenched his jaw. The command center was less than 100 meters away. So close. But close didn't matter if they got torn apart before reaching it. He tapped his earpiece. Lyra, I need options. Her reply came instantly. There's a maintenance hatch on your right. Leads to an auxiliary conduit. Kalen's eyes darted to the bulkhead beside them, spotting the barely visible panel. We can use that? Lyra hesitated. It's not meant for personnel. It's for coolant circulation. The pressure seals will probably rupture as soon as you. Probably? Definitely rupture. Kalen exhaled sharply. Guess we better move fast then. He turned to his squad. We're going through. Jace frowned. You mean the freezing death trap? He grinned. Unless you want to take the auto turret route? Jace cursed under her breath but stepped forward, helping pry the hatch open. A blast of icy vapor shot out, filling the air with a sharp metallic scent. One by one they crawled into the conduit. Galactic Council's last stand. On the Council flagship, Warlord Tal was pacing. The humans had taken Morvith 7's surface. The last transmission from their ground forces reported heavy casualties. The orbital fleet still had firepower, but with the station compromised, the planet's defense grid could turn against them. And if that happened, Tal slammed a fist against the war table. This ends now. Varkesh, his superior and chancellor of the council, remained eerily calm. His reptilian features were unreadable, but Tal saw the flicker of something behind those cold eyes. Fear. Tal's mandibles clicked. Deploy the extermination fleet. Varkesh did not immediately respond. This war has lasted far longer than it should have, Tal continued, voice low. We let them spread. We let them persist. And now we are losing because we underestimated them. Varkesh turned his head slightly. You believe annihilation is the answer? Tal bared his fangs. It has always been the answer. The Chancellor's gaze lingered on the war map. Morvith 7's defense grid was still offline. If they struck now, they could wipe out every resistance fighter on the surface. The humans would finally understand what it meant to fight the Council. Or so Tal believed. Varkesh, however, knew something Tal did not. Humanity had proven one terrible, undeniable fact. They did not surrender. The war turns. Kalen's body burned with cold as he forced himself through the tight conduit. His breath came in ragged gasps, his fingers numb against the metal. Then light ahead. He reached the end of the passage and kicked the panel open. The command center was right there. 6 enemy operators inside. They turned in shock as Kalen's squad burst from the hatch, weapons blazing. 2 down. A third reached for the alarm. Jace shot him clean through the chest. Kalen tackled the last one, slamming him against the console. Shut down the fleet's targeting systems now. The alien wheezed, eyes wide with panic. They'll kill me? Kalen pressed his pistol to the creature's head. I'm faster. The operator hesitated. Then with shaking hands he entered the override command. Across the station the defense grid came back online. Kalen hit his earpiece. Lyra, tell me that worked. Lyra's laugh was pure relief. Oh, it worked. Above Morvith 7 the sky ignited. Council fleet, caught in their own trap. Tal watched in stunned silence as his ships began exploding. The planet's orbital defenses, previously silent, turned against them. Beams of golden energy ripped through Council cruisers, severing their formations, breaking the fleet apart. Warlord Tal had no time to react. Varkesh the Chancellor did not flinch. He simply observed. Because this was no longer a battle. This was a reckoning. Kalen, the final choice. The battle was won. Morvith 7 was no longer under Council control. Their fleet was in ruins. Kalen sat on the command console, staring at the wreckage burning in the sky above. He could hear the cheers of the resistance fighters outside. They had done the impossible. Jace leaned against the console beside him, grinning. "You actually pulled it off." Kalen exhaled slowly. "We pulled it off." Lyra's voice crackled through the comms. "Kalen, we've got a transmission." He straightened. "From who?" Pause. "Then." "The Chancellor of the Galactic Council." Kalen's heart hammered. "Varkesh. The most powerful being in the known galaxy. And he was calling them. The final call." Kalen's fingers hovered over the console, his pulse pounding in his ears. The Chancellor of the Galactic Council was calling them. The war was all but over. The Resistance had taken Morvith, 7. The Council's fleet was in ruins, their orbital defenses turned against them. And yet, Kalen knew better. The Council didn't just surrender. They had ruled the galaxy for centuries, crushing rebellions before they could even rise. If Varkesh was reaching out now, it wasn't out of desperation. He still had a move to play. Lyra's voice was hushed, uncertain. "Kalen, are you sure you want to answer this?" Kalen met her gaze across the console. She had been with him through every impossible fight. She had watched humans claw their way to survival, defying an empire that had never known defeat. He gave her a grim nod. "Patch him through." A moment later, Varkesh's image flickered to life. A deal with the devil. The Chancellor of the Galactic Council appeared on the screen, a towering figure draped in ceremonial robes, his scaled face impassive. His golden eyes flicked across the Resistance fighters, then settled on Kalen. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he spoke. "Congratulations." The single word was calm, but beneath it lurked something far more dangerous. Not anger. Not fear. Curiosity. Kalen didn't react. He wouldn't give Varkesh the satisfaction. "Is that why you called?" Kalen asked. "To congratulate us for destroying your fleet?" Varkesh smiled, a slow, deliberate expression. "You believe this war is over?" Kalen's fingers clenched. "We control Morvith, 7, he said. Your ships are burning in the void. Your warlord is dead. Seems pretty over to me." Varkesh exhaled softly. "You've won a battle. But tell me, Commander Kalen, what do you think happens next?" Kalen didn't answer. The Chancellor leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "We were prepared to lose Morvith, 7. Do you truly believe our rule hinges on a single planet?" Lyra stiffened beside Kalen. Jace cursed under her breath. Varkesh's voice was smooth, measured. Too calm. "Our fleets are vast," he continued. "You have forced us to acknowledge humanity's tenacity. But you cannot win this war. Even if you fight for decades, billions of your kind will die. Your people will starve under embargo. Every city you hold we will bomb into dust. And in the end your kind will be erased." Kalen's grip on the console tightened. Varkesh wasn't bluffing. And the worst part? He was right. The Council's fleets were spread across 1,000 systems. Humanity had fought tooth and nail for one planet. One victory. But if the Council truly committed to extermination... Kalen's gut twisted. Then Varkesh did something unexpected. He leaned back. And he made an offer. "Or," the Chancellor said, "you can end this, here and now." A heavy silence fell over the room. Kalen narrowed his eyes. "What are you proposing?" Varkesh steepled his clawed fingers. "Surrender. Not in defeat, but as equals. Humanity will be acknowledged as a sovereign species. You will be granted a seat in the Galactic Council. Your worlds will be spared." Lyra's breath hitched. Jace's knuckles went white. Kalen's chest tightened. He wanted to believe it, but he knew better. He took a slow step forward, eyes locked on the alien ruler. "And what do you get in return?" Varkesh's smile didn't waver. "Obedience." The choice that changed everything. Kalen stared at the Galactic Chancellor, his mind racing. This was it. The moment that decided humanity's future. Accept the offer and they would live, under Council rule. Reject it and the war would continue. And humanity would burn. The Resistance fighters around him shifted uneasily. They knew it too. Then Lyra whispered, just loud enough for Kalen to hear. "They never thought we'd win this much. That's why he's offering this. He's afraid." Kalen's breath slowed. Lyra was right. Varkesh wasn't offering peace. He was offering a leash. And he expected Kalen to take it. Kalen exhaled. Then he stepped forward and met Varkesh's gaze. "You want obedience?" His voice was steady. "Come and take it." Varkesh's smile vanished. Kalen cut the transmission. The end of the council. Varkesh stared at the blank screen in silence. Kalen had just sealed humanity's fate. Or so Varkesh believed. But as he turned away from the monitor, something unexpected happened. A new transmission appeared on his display. A council officer rushed in, panicked. "Chancellor, there's a disturbance." Before he could finish, the screen flickered. A dozen other species appeared. Rebels. Uprisings. Systems that had suffered under the council's rule for centuries. And all of them had seen what the humans had done. A reptilian warlord bared his fangs. The humans proved the council is not invincible. An avian chieftain clicked her beak. "You have ruled for too long, Varkesh." A machine intelligence hummed. "The time of the council is over." Varkesh's hands trembled. Humanity's defiance had ignited a fire across the galaxy. Humanity's victory. On Morvith 7, Kalen stood beneath the burning sky, staring up at the wreckage of the council's once mighty fleet. He could hear Lyra's voice in his earpiece, updating him on the latest reports. Other species were rising. The council was crumbling. And humanity, the species they tried to exterminate, had started the revolution. Jay stepped up beside him. "Think we just changed history?" Kalen smirked. "No. We just started it. The war no one could stop, until humans changed the game." The end.